What's up, everyone? Hope you're having an amazing day wherever in the world that you are. Welcome back to the Dempsey Invest podcast. And today is an episode that I've been meaning to do for flipping ages, LISAs versus pensions. Because the thing about LISAs is they don't quite fit the mold of the rest of ISAs. And actually, well, I don't want to give too many spoilers away, but they're more akin to pension vehicles, or at least they can be used in that instance. And to help me and assist me on this podcast today, I've got my good friend, Mr. Jon Doyle. Jon, how are you?
I'm very well, thank you, mate. Yeah. How are you doing?
I am wonderful. Things are really, really, really popping these days. Got a ton of stuff that I'm creating for Dentistry Invest on the back end. I'm super, super excited for 2023. How about you? What's going on in John's world these days?
I think things again really excited. 2023 is going to be a big year for Juniper. We're in a growth phase of the business, training up new advisors, taking on new clients. Yeah, it's exciting things happening. Exciting things happening.
Honestly, when you get bitten by the business bug, it feels flipping good, and when you can create something, especially when you can create something that uplifts everybody else, you're scaling that mountain and you're lifting as you climb. It's
Yeah.
flipping special. It's not for everyone, but I mean, for me, I find it harder to not think about it than think about it, than to not think about Dentistry Invest than to think
Yeah.
about Dentistry Invest. And I think that just means you found your happy place is all, John. What do you reckon?
Yeah, my wife's got used to it now. There used to be a time when she'd be like, "Can you just stop talking about it or stop, switch off for a minute?" And it's not like, stressing at night or any of that kind of stuff anymore. But it's more just when your mind goes quiet and you get still, it starts to run with ideas. And that's the bit that I find exciting. Like when I'm on holiday, like day one, day two, chill. Day three, I'm like thinking, right, where are we taking this? Where are we taking this? What's going on? And it's because it just excites me. It fulfills me. Yeah, it's good.
Well, this is it. You can almost spot the entrepreneurial people out from a crowd because they just get so, whenever an idea pops into their head, business or not, they get so excited. And that is one of the hallmarks for me. So I flip and hear you on that one. John, we should probably pull things back to investing before we run too far down
Yes.
this path.
Yeah,
Because
yeah, yeah.
in classic podcast form, sometimes we wind up talking for 20 minutes about something else entirely. So I'll be strict and swift with that one today for myself mainly because I'm the main culprit. But anyway, back to what we're supposed to be talking about: LISAs versus pensions. Before we talk about LISAs, it might be nice for people out there just to have an overview of ISAs because a LISA is of course a type of ISA, and who better to ask than yourself on that one?
Okay, yeah. So an ISA is just a savings vehicle. It's something we can put cash or investments like stocks and shares into. And the ISA is a tax wrapper that the government provides us for legal tax mitigation. And it enables us to invest in a tax efficient manner. So there will be no tax on any income or no tax on any capital gains that we might make from the investments that we have in there. There's obviously a limit to how much we can put into ISAs each year. Currently, that stands at 20,000, subject to change. But that's the way ISAs go, isn't it? Everything. Budget day is a nightmare for financial advisors. What's changing? What's changing? It just means that ISA's a great vehicle for putting money away into. We can grow and invest tax efficiently and hopefully make a lot of money over the long term.
That's the idea. Cool. So specifically within that, there's different types of ISAs, and we could jump straight into ISAs. Here's the thing, I've always found it's nice to have like a stick in the mud basically to compare. Are you with me? Yeah.
Yeah.
So we've got stocks and shares ISA, got cash ISA, etc. Maybe we could just elaborate a little bit more on those for people who are
Okay.
for the first time.
Yeah, yeah. So probably the most familiar to most people is the cash ISA. It's what you'll be able to open up with most banks and building societies. It is what it says on the tin. It's an ISA that holds cash, usually either on a fixed term basis. So you'll put it in for 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, and they'll give you a set interest rate. Or you can get instant access ISAs as well that will just provide an interest rate. And all it does is hold cash like a bank account, but you pay no tax on the interest.
Very nice. How are interest rates doing? How have obviously the Bank of England put their interest rates up today? How's that filtering through to cash ISAs actually? Just as a little bit of a tangent.
Yeah, we're starting to see them come up a little bit over time. I said to someone recently that cash is having like a Sandra Bullock moment. Like Miss Congeniality, the film, where like Sandra Bullock's this mess of a CIA agent. That's hard to say. And then halfway through the film, they suddenly put makeup on her, take off her glasses, put her hair down, and she's hot. And everyone's like, "Oh my goodness, Sandra Bullock was hot. We never knew." And that's kind of what's happening with cash at the moment. We're getting a lot more inquiries from clients. People have forgotten about it for the last 10 years. But yeah, we are seeing cash rates go up. We have cash management that we offer for clients. So we're starting to see better rates, maybe 2%, 2.5% on instant access, maybe even a touch more than that some places. So they're starting to follow through. It's still not as exciting as investing long term, but it does have that safety element to it.
Cool. Awesome. Cash ISAs being the classic, then stocks and shares ISAs are in
Yeah,
the mix
the
as well,
stocks and
right?
shares ISA is an ISA wrapper where you can go and invest in either individual stocks and shares into certain investment funds, ETF, index funds, whatever floats your boat investment wise. There are certain rules, but most investment funds that you would be able to go out and buy would be available through a stocks and shares ISA. Yeah, and again, 20,000 can go into them exactly the same, and you can move money between cash and stocks and shares ISAs depending on how you're feeling about investment risk.
Well, this is the key thing about ISAs, apart from the black sheep of the family, which is the LISA in a way, in a way, right? Which is
Yeah,
that you could put the money in and it's freely accessible at any point, apart from LISAs and of course fixed term cash ISAs, as you said.
and I'd say that one of the coolest things about ISAs now is most of the ISAs, certainly the ones we use at Juniper, are called flexible ISAs. And what a flexible ISA means is, you can only put 20,000 a year in, but if you need to take a lump sum out, you can put all of that money back in within the same tax year. So I've had situations before where a client of mine was buying a new house. They hadn't quite completed on their old house. So we withdrew money from their ISA. We've been doing this with them disciplined way for a long time. Withdrew money from their ISA, bought the house, the new house, and then when the old house sold, they put all that money back into their ISA, several £100,000. So they
No
used their ISA.
way, I didn't know that.
Yeah. And then another one, a client, a local dentist to me, was doing an extension. They were putting a new wraparound extension on, one new surgery, new reception, and it looks really sweet. And they were just a bit short on the funding. Lloyd's were messing around. It was kind of during that 2021. Are dentists still good? Are they safe? Are they not? And so again, we used their ISA to get the building work started. They withdrew all the money in sort of April, May time, managed to get the stuff, get the extension sorted. Lloyd's then sorted all the mortgages out once it was done, and we repaid the money back into their ISA before the end of March the following year.
I did not know that was possible. That's actually super interesting. So is that's only on specific provide that's only on stocks and shares ISAs with specific providers, right? Or every provider?
Yeah,
Ah,
yeah. A lot of it will come down to, and this is where you get into the real weeds of how how providers work. A lot of it's down to their computer systems. So the legislation says that ISAs can be flexible now, but if their computer system doesn't allow, they've hard coded the one-way allowance calculation, then it's a whole big problem for them in developing their systems to allow flexible ISAs. But certainly, and there are DIY providers who will offer flexible ISAs as well as advised platforms that will do flexible ISAs now. And it can be a really powerful tool.
that is a flipping pearl right there. I did not know that. I mean, let's set aside the software things. I didn't even know that legally that was something that you could do,
Yeah.
but there we are. Interesting stuff.
Flexible ISA, mate. Every
Interesting
day is
stuff.
a school day.
The more you know, that is cool as hell. Anyway,
Yeah.
onwards to LISAs because they differ a little bit from the ISAs
Yeah.
that you mentioned previously, and unequivocally they're not flexible, or at least not without a penalty, right?
Yeah. So The LISA, I like to think of it as like a hybrid between a pension and an ISA. It's kind of their love child.
Oh, wow.
But not necessarily a good way. It's got all the negatives of both potentially, right?
I do.
But a lifetime ISA, it's a type of ISA where you have a much smaller limit and it forms part of your ISA allowance, right? So you can put £4,000 a year into your lifetime ISA. You can only open it before your 40th birthday. You can only contribute to it until you're 50. However, the upside is you get a 25% bonus from the government for every pound that you're putting in, okay? Up to £1,000. So you put your £4,000 in, it suddenly becomes £5,000. Happy days. The catch, there's always a catch, isn't there? You never get anything free in life. There's always a catch. The catch is that this money is then locked within this ISA, except for very, very specific purposes. Buying your first home, okay? That means that the people buying the house, right, are both first-time buyers, never bought a property before. This has caught a few people out when maybe they're getting together with someone who has already owned a home. Maybe it's a second marriage or something, or their partner's previously owned a home, but they're a first-time buyer. It's caught some people out. So it's buying a first home or aged 60 or over. That's where like the pension element comes into it, is that it's designed, locked up then till you're 60. Or if you're terminally ill with less than 12 months to live, and that will be a doctor has sort of given you that diagnosis. So we get the upside of the tax relief, but it comes with a set of restrictive handcuffs. Other than that, it works in very similar ways to a normal ISA. You can invest in exactly the same things, often on exactly the same platforms, and it can sit side by side with your other ISAs. Yeah.
Cool. And I'm right in saying there's actually a distinction within LISAs in that there's a cash LISA and a stocks and shares LISA, right?
I believe so. Yeah, we don't tend to get too involved with the cash side of things. There probably are cash LISAs out there. We, as advisors, tend to focus more on the investment lifetime ISA because it's locked up, and you have to be 40 or under when you're taking them out. These are a minimum 20-year investment because, apart from maybe if you're imminently buying your first home, but we found that most people taking them out are already homeowners. There's a small sort of marketplace that these seem to work reasonably well with. So most people, it's a 20+ year investment, in which case we don't really want to be sitting around in cash for that length of time. With something that's locked up. So we tend to focus more on the investment side than the cash ISA or cash LISA side, yeah.
Here's the thing. Here's what I often get questions about. People will say, hey, I want to open up a stocks and shares LISA and I want to invest the money so I have more to buy my house. Oh, and by the way, I'm buying my house in 6 months' time. And I'm like, whoa, 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 whoa.
Yeah.
For the cash rewards, I get it. Yeah. Is that something that you come across? Because what I'm getting at is generally timeframes over which we invest our money are much longer than 6 months.
Yeah.
To never guarantee, we need to be careful with that word, but to increase the odds of success as much as possible, right?
So the average age of a Juniper client's 51. The average age of financial advisor clients, when I talk to other practice owners, is in their 60s. Okay. So when we're thinking, dentists looking to buy their first property, probably late 20s, early 30s, depending on how life's gone. Some of them, some later. Generally speaking, we're not talking to lots and lots of those clients. So those sort of first-time buyers. We've got some children of clients who will do this. I've got one, in fact, text me this week. Need to get hold of some money from, I think, because he's buying his first house. Fantastic, very happy for him. But if you are there in that situation where you're going, I'm looking to buy in the next 6, 12 months, even 2 years, we would always look at cash as being the way to go, especially if you're on that very fixed pathway to buying. It's a very deliberate plan to be buying in that time period, because you just don't know what the market is going to do in 6 to 12 months. And anyone who put money into investments over the last 12 months to go and buy has probably ended up with less than they invested, depending on the investments they're in, which is why cash is king when it comes to short term.
Hell yeah. And another thing we should mention as well, I believe that house has to be under 450K. Maybe you mentioned that?
That's a good question. Yes, it
Yeah.
does. Yeah. It does have to be under 450K.
Yeah, correct. Massive, right? So here's the thing on that 2 year time frame, when we're very helpful to get advice, I would say, and I would unequivocally say that if we want to put that cash within the LISA to some work.
Yeah, I'm just also looking here. You've got to buy the property at least 12 months after you make your first lifetime ISA contribution.
Also good to know. Good to know.
Yeah. So it's not something you want to get caught out on. You can break your money out of a lifetime ISA, but it comes at a cost, which I'm sure we'll come on to later. But yeah.
Yeah, well, it's 25% off the balance, I believe, and it's designed to is the cost at reclaiming it.
Yeah, so the way it works is if you needed to break your money out of the lifetime ISA, you get hit with a 25% withdrawal penalty. Now, on the face of it, that can sound very much like you're just paying back your initial bonus of 25%. But let's just look at some numbers. So you've put £4,000 in, you've got your 25% bonus. We've now got £5,000 in our lifetime ISA. Sat in cash, and we immediately realize we've made a mistake and we want to get this money out. So we've not made any interest. We pay a 25% withdrawal penalty, which is £1,250. And we end up with £3,750, less than we've put in. So breaking out of these does come at quite a cost. It's possible, but it's not something we want to ever have to do. And it's why we need to think really carefully about what the purpose of using a lifetime ISA is versus other savings vehicles for what we're trying to achieve here. And that's where this buying that first home has caught a number of people. I've seen a number of things in the press about this of, person one, new couple comes together through lockdown or whatever, and they're falling in love, they're very happy, they want to buy a house together, they buy a house together, they find out that one of them has owned a house previously, and therefore they are not first-time buyers, and the lifetime ISA can no longer be used, or they have to pay the penalty.
Good to know the T's and C's because it's super important, right? And here's why, specifically why I want to do a podcast on LISAs, because people reach out to me and they're like, oh yeah, 25% on top of the money that you contribute. How can any investment beat that? And the answer is that over a short time frame, no, it can't. 25% is a huge reimbursement, is a huge return. Are you with me? But here's the thing, it's kind of like, it's like running into that. You don't realize that when you put that money through the letterbox of the house, you haven't actually got the key to the house, okay, until you're 57, and it can be doing whatever the heck it likes in there, right? We have to think about the next step, right? And I feel this is exactly why I wanted to do this podcast, is because I feel like that dangling carrot is too much for people to resist almost in the short term, and we have to think about the short term and the next step to actually get this money back, which is just what you've neatly described.
Yeah, perfect.
Lovely stuff. And I think we said everything that we on licenses, right? Yeah, we got them. Anything more you'd like to add?
I don't think there's much more. We'll probably come into why we might want to use them and the things we want to use them for in a bit.
Sure.
Because they can fit neatly into a financial plan. They can fulfill a purpose. But for me personally, unless we're already on that path to buying a property and we know who we're buying the property with, it's not something that I have property purchase in mind for when we're looking at lifetime ISAs.
Cool. Good to know. Onwards to pensions.
Mm.
So I heard a really nice description of a pension the other day, and it's an investment account with T's and C's, a bit like an ISA, a bit like a LISA. But yeah, and this is why they're often compared, right?
Yeah. Yeah, because essentially what we're trying to do with the pension is provide for our long-term future. So again, it's an investment with T's and C's, an investment with some handcuffs. We get the tax relief, whether that's corporation tax relief by paying for it through our company, whether it's personal tax relief by making personal contributions. It grows tax-free in the same way, the ISAs and the tax efficiently, in the same way that ISAs and the pension and the lifetime ISAs do, but we can't access it until we're at a certain point in time. Most people have 55 in their mind. It's 10 years before state retirement age. So depending on who you are, that could be 55, it could be 57, it could be 58. And as the state pension inevitably moves higher, it will follow it 10 years before.
Cool.
And so we're very much looking at these as vehicles to fund our exit from working life in later life, I guess.
Yeah, 100%. So yeah, with regards to pensions, there's a few other things that make pensions lucrative, right? Like succession, etc., and things along those lines. Be helpful to go into those, and then what we'll do is we'll do a comparison. That'll be highly valuable.
Yeah, sure. So it's very likely that there's two types of pensions that listeners will have. A lot of dentists still have NHS pension. And then if they've been fully private or they do some private work, they will potentially also have a personal pension or SIP or other type of individual pension. So the NHS pension is what we call a defined benefit. It's a promise of an income. You've got some great podcasts already on it. So if people want the nuts and bolts of that, go find them.
100%. Episode 14 with myself and Luke Hurley, and also a really cool one that I did somewhat recently with Ian Hawke, and we've done the NHS podcast to death. Those are gold mines.
Yeah, exactly. So very simply, promise of an income. It's not a pot of money. And at a certain point, depending on the scheme, you will start getting that income coming in. Your partner will get half of that, usually when you if you predecease them, and then on your death it expires. With a SIP or a personal pension, what you have is a lump of money that at some point you will just put a tap on and you'll start drawing money from it. Depending on your circumstances, that can be a monthly income or it could be lumps. You do get your 25% tax-free, if anyone thinks that we're forgetting about it. This isn't necessarily going into the technical details of pensions, but one of the advantages that a personal pension or SIP will have is on your death, that money is completely inherited by your beneficiaries. Depending on the time of your death, before or after age 75, it either passes tax-free, so if you die before 75, or if you're over 75, it is inherited as a pension scheme by the beneficiary, so they get to draw it at their marginal rate of tax. What it never does is, or very rarely, will it form part of your estate. There's a couple of loopholes that you need to watch out for if you're meddling with pensions later. But most of the time, it doesn't form part of your taxable estate and therefore bypasses inheritance tax. So it can be a very interesting and useful tool for passing wealth on, as well as providing for your own personal financial future.
Good to know. Two quick things to add value to this podcast, which are relevant to what we're talking about. First of all, a way that I heard ISAs compared to pensions very neatly was that with ISAs, you get taxed on the way in, you don't get taxed on the way out. Pensions, you don't get taxed on the way in, but you do get taxed on the way out. So what does that mean? So let's talk about your ISAs. So first of all, that money has to be in your personal name for you to invest that. right? It can't be in a company. It can't be in anything.
Yeah, it has to be personal money. You either have to pay dividend tax or income tax to get it in your personal name, and then you pop that money into the pension.
That's right. Whereas the beautiful thing about a pension is you can take 40K from your business, just stick it straight in there, right?
Yeah, and in fact, you can carry forward unused allowance as well. So you can sometimes, in some circumstances, go beyond even the 40K.
Yes, that's right. Because I think it's 3 years in the past if you haven't maxed out your contributions, but the account's been opened, something along those lines.
Yeah, as long as you've got a pension lying around somewhere, then you can put this in. You can use those allowances. So, for example, if you had a dentist who did 3 years NHS, they got an NHS pension, but a decade ago they've been working private ever since, never bothered with a pension. They could put 160K into a pension in some circumstances.
Holy moly, good to know. Good to
Yeah,
know.
yeah,
Second thing I was going to say just then, second thing I was going to say to what we talked about earlier. Here is the most succinct and neatly I've ever heard someone describe the pros and cons or compare the pros and cons between different investment vehicles or different tax wrappers. Okay. Basically, you can distill everything down to pretty much two questions and then go from there, right? And this is really neat, right?
mm,
First thing is accessibility. When can you get your money? if
yeah,
that's if that's so important to you that you need to have access to your money in 3 4 years, then actually that trumps everything if you think about it. So we can almost put the other advantages to one side and then we let that govern our choice, right?
yeah.
Second thing to consider. Now, by the way, this is not a definitive list, by the way. There's obviously more
Yeah,
to it.
yeah,
These are the main these are the main two, of
yeah,
course.
yeah, yeah.
Number one, accessibility. So, like I say, if not being able to touch your money until your state pension age or 10 years before state pension age or whatever is a non-negotiable for you, then actually, should we be thinking about a pension or a LISA? Maybe not, right? Second thing, tax advantages, right? And if you purely straight up just want to save a ton of money on income tax, then you're more likely going to lean towards a pension. I thought that was really neat. That's your decision tree right there.
So there's like three things that I often talk about that any financial planning process should give to people or bear in mind, right? One is the truth of our current financial situation. How grim is it or how good is it? Second is the hope that in the end, with whatever planning we're going to do, we're going to be all right. But the third one, and the most important one, is choice. We've got to make sure that in our planning we build choice into it. And that's where this thing with lifetime ISAs, pensions, ISAs comes in, because what do each of these do? Well, they either open up choices to us or they restrict choices when it comes to the unknown future that we're living in. What my experience tells me is that most people are pretty bad at knowing what's going to happen in 10 or 15 years in their lives, let alone the 30 years before, you and I end up anywhere near sort of state pension age. I'll be a bit there a bit sooner than you. But, when we're talking about these long sweeps of time, it's very, very hard. There's so many potential futures that we could be living in. And in the meantime, all these decisions we make now either keep choice on the table or have choice off the table for us. And that's the time and the tax there. Time is so important. We need to know when we're going to be accessing this money, or that we've got choices and options when it inevitably hits the fan.
Beautifully described. I love that. Let's pull things back. We went on a tangent there, but it's okay because there was a ton of value that was very useful. So,
Yeah,
and I love that. I love freestyling. By the way, all these podcasts are ad lib. We barely plan anything before we come on. Let's pull things back to LISAs versus pensions.
yeah.
In your
Yeah.
experience, what planning considerations should people think about before they make that choice?
Yeah. So the first one really, and I'm going to be a bit naughty here. You've told me not to do this, but I'm going to pull ISAs just into this conversation a little bit. Okay.
That's cool.
Because the thing that we need to think through is, when do we want this money? And what choices are we giving up or keeping on the table when we're putting money into these savings vehicles? Because each of them can have the same investments in them, right? We wouldn't do this, but let's say you just want an S&P 500 index fund, right? It's nice that you can have the same thing in all of them. So they'll do the same thing over time, right? Now, with a pension, the agreement that you're making with your future self is very, very clear. I'm putting this money into a pension. At some point in my future, I will draw this money down and I will get full tax relief, not just the 25% uplift, but full tax relief on this contribution. For most dentists, that's going to be somewhere 40 to 45%. Could even be more if they're that nasty tax trap around 100 grand. Or if they're a business owner, from April, it is a 25% corporation tax, depending on their profit levels, right? So it's a very attractive tax relief. And we're making this contract with our future selves that this money is for my retirement. It's a very clear contract with your older self. With a lifetime ISA, one, we've got to get that money into our personal name. So that's a consideration that you're going to have to make. And then it's this question of what is the contract that I'm making with my future self? And I think there's quite a few unknowns around that make that quite difficult. Is this money that we're going to access earlier? Is this money that I'm going to, leave for my retirement? There's too many unknowns there for me that make it a little bit more fuzzy as to the agreement we're making with ourselves. And with an ISA, I probably will need this money at some point in the, middle to long term. Often, school fees, or with a lot of dentists, I have this phrase of minding the gap. Okay. So most dentists I speak to have an age of 60 in their mind for retirement. Comes from nowhere else other than an anchoring effect with the 95 pension scheme, right?
Yeah, it's cultural, right? It's literally cultural. Yeah.
Retirement at 60 because every dentist who came before me retired at 60. For anyone, in the 2015 scheme or, in private pensions, this isn't the case anymore. You don't have this age, but we still have this desire of retiring before state pension age. And so we've got this gap between when we want to retire and when all our NHS pension income comes in, or our state pension. And so, it might be that we're looking to fund the gap there between 60 and 68. Might be that we're trying to fund other things. So it's really important when you're going through these decisions to work out what is the purpose I'm trying to achieve with this. And then, am I using a pension, a lifetime ISA, or an ISA to fill that need?
Yeah, so it's a cash flow financial planning thing, right?
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah,
Yeah.
man. 100%. That's cool. That's cool. Anything else? Oh, here's actually something interesting, right? So the profile of a person, and we can speak broadly here without
Yeah.
being too specific. The profile of a person who picks a LISA versus a private pension, is there
Yeah.
any common denominators or common factors that you
Yeah.
notice?
Yeah. So where we tend to use them is where we've got either annual allowance or lifetime allowance concerns.
Ah, lovely.
So someone who is already putting 40,000 into their pension, or because of their NHS pension might be over that, any doctors having a sneaky listen might know that as well. So someone who's already maxing out their pensions, or someone who's through investment growth and diligent savings getting up towards that lifetime allowance of 1.1, whatever it is these days, million, right? In which case we go, I'm already doing everything I can on maximizing tax relief, on putting into pensions. I still want to put money away for retired me. And then a lifetime ISA could fit that bill, because you will get that tax relief. And your contract with your future self is, this is for 60+ year old me.
Very nice. Here's something that just popped into my head. For anybody who has got this far in the podcast, I know what it's like to listen to a podcast. Your mind starts to wander a little bit.
Mm.
Okay, you're in the shower, you're driving home, you're in the gym, you're doing a rep. Listen the hell up to this part right now because this will be very valuable. John, is there any disadvantage to just opening a LISA, sticking a quid in it before you're 40, and just keeping it ticking along?
Not that I can think of, and I've done this with a couple of clients. One of the things with the lifetime ISA is you have to open it before you're 40. And if you get to age 40 in one day, you're not allowed to open one up, but you don't have to contribute every year. So yes, you could, well, if you want to, if you've got FOMO, if you're reaching your 40th birthday, open up a lifetime ISA. You could even open up a cash lifetime ISA if you're, maybe a bit risk averse or you don't like making decisions under pressure. And get one opened. You can transfer them. You can top it up in future years, and at least you have the option. That choice is still on the table for you when in your planning through your 40s and 50s in terms of contributions.
That's an ISA hack right there, and there's actually a few other ISA hacks like that. And we should probably do a podcast on that someday, a summary of ISA hacks, the things that you need to know about your ISA to get the max out of it, ISA hacks. There we go. I just made
Like that flexible ISA hack from earlier.
Exactly. Yeah, this is it. This is it. And there's also that thing where it's like if you're between 16 and 18, you can have a junior ISA and a cash ISA at the same time. So you can actually receive £29,000 in total into your own name. I'm right in saying that, right?
Yeah. And that's great if you're thinking about your own children and you trust them not to go and blow that money when they turn 18.
Cool.
Yeah.
Listen, that was a flipping awesome podcast, John. Thank you so much for your time. For anybody who's listening, Jon Doyle on the group Juniper Wealth. John, can you give us a little bit more information about where to find you?
You can find me Juniper_John on Instagram and Twitter. You can find me on LinkedIn as well, and at juniperwealth.co.uk, or you can just DM me on Facebook. I'm all over the group trying to add value and be helpful where I can. Probably trying to add too much nuance to Facebook comments.
No,
you know something really funny? My 15-year-old knows when I'm commenting on the Facebook group because she laughs at my face and the kind of almost like I'm playing a conversation in my face. Like, what are you doing? There we go.
That's fine. I recognize that pure concentration, and it's probably testament to the amount of thought you're putting in to the value that you give on there. So thank you, John. We owe you.
It's a pleasure.
Much love, my man. John, Blinding Podcast today. Always a pleasure to have you. We'll catch up very soon. I'll see you later.
See you soon.